Hello, art friends. So when we are getting paint onto our palette, we only need a couple of drops at a time. We don't need a lot of paint. Even when we're doing our background like this blue here, this turquoise blue, I didn't use a whole lot of paint. I can use just a few drops at a time because you can always come back and get more paint. So here I have my black. I am going to put about that much. Can you see that? And that's still more than I'm gonna need for right now. Like I said, I can always come back and get more paint. So the last part of this painting is to outline this part of the ear right here. You can see it doesn't have an outline and the ear on this side does. So you're gonna pick a small type of brush. So you don't want a very large brush. You don't want a large brush. Like that is too big to do an outline. That might be good for doing the background. So you want to pick a small type of brush. And I like to put a little bit of water in it. And I have a little bit of water right here. I put a little bit of water on my brush. And then with my fingers, I can just kind of get it to a point. Because we want to make sure our brush isn't smushed down. We want it to use it like it's a ballerina up on its toe, just like this. When I'm putting paint onto my brush, I just dip in the very tip. And here's an important part. So if you put your paintbrush in your paint and then swirl your brush and lift up, you'll have an easier time making a very nice, straight, smooth line. So notice that I don't have any paint up in this metal part that's called the barrel. We don't have any paint in here. It's only on the brush. So we dip our paint in and we swirl and lift up, and you can test this out on your palette to see if you have a nice straight line. So then once you have enough paint, and you might find that you have to dip your paintbrush in a couple of times, that's okay. So you dip in and you can swirl and lift up. And then I am going to be painting this ear here. So let's see, I'm gonna touch my brush down to the paper very carefully. I'm not smushing it down, I'm just very carefully drawing my line. And when it feels like I don't have enough paint on my brush anymore, I just come back over to my palette, dip, 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 swirl. And again, you can always test it out to see if it's making a nice straight line. And then back to my painting. And you don't need to rush. You can do this in a couple different passes. And then I'm out of paint, so I will dip and swirl. And sometimes it's a good idea to turn your painting in another direction, like maybe turn it upside down. You have to experiment, see what feels good. But you do want to take your time, and you want to be careful if some of this other paint is still wet. You don't want to drag your arm. You don't want to drag your arm into the paint, right? So take your time. I'm pressing very lightly. I'm not pressing very hard. A little bit of paint. And swirl, and again, notice that there's no paint up in the barrel into the metal part. I'm being very careful. Okay, and when I see that the paint is starting to drag a little bit, that I don't have enough paint on my brush anymore, I go back to my palette. And look, see, I only put one drop on, and look at how much paint I still have left. I don't need very much paint. You can always go back to the paint table and get more paint. Or ask me, raise your hand and ask me, and I can bring you more paint. Okay, there is the second ear outlined, and I'll be sure to make sure that that gets dry. I hope you enjoy this project, so just take your time. You don't need a lot of paint on your palette. Remember, you dip in just the bristles, and then swirl it and lift. And you can always test it out on your palette to see if you are able to make a nice straight line. Good luck!